Okay, let me just check something. Okay, it's not muted. Volume, audio should be fine. Okay, I think it's all set. Stupid wires getting tangled though. I wanted to. The other headset's used for watching stuff on my own time. This is for the recording stuff because I don't want to ruin this headset. This one's important for these read-alongs, so I want to keep it in as good condition as I can. So I have two headsets right now. Though this one is a little weird for some reason. It does this thing where if I move it just ever so slightly by the plug part, the audio will go from one ear to the other, and it's really weird. I might have to get a headset I know I can rely on, so I might save for maybe a cordless headset, because I mostly use corded headsets. Because whatever. They function, they work to the best of their advantage. Or I could buy a really good corded headset, but I'd rather a cordless one, because I feel like that would be the safer deal. But we're on chapter 12, just adjusting the mic, and it is called Endwood. I usually read in my Maldron voice when I'm doing this book, and just do other voices for the other characters that I try to remember what they sound like, because it's been a bit. So, but recently I have done this the other day, and I hope to get to more of the other books. I have Hyperion, Three Body Problem, Silmarillion, a couple other books standing by that I can move on into. I feel like the easiest books for me right now are, funny enough, going to be Beastars and anything from Lovecraft's, because a lot of those stories are very short in the Lovecraft book, so they can take me like a very quick video for each story. I'll have plenty of content off of just that big, giant, chunky book alone. And then the Beastars, after reading the first one for the channel, I found it went by very smoothly, though I might change the way I do some of the voices in it, just because I wasn't very happy with how some of my voices came out, though they might not come out any better the next time around. It's just because I thought they didn't all entirely work well. So I'll see how it goes. Anyways, let's just get back to this one. And we might try and finish the book today, actually, and then it'll finally be done. Like, how long after? 6 years or so that my channel has started, or since I started this read-along? It's taken so long to finally get to this thing. I'm sorry it took so long. I hope Elden Ring is an okay backdrop for this, too, as a fantasy book. So this is a read-along of of Deltora, Dragon's Nest, by Emily Rada, and it is a scholastic book. Alright, let's continue with Chapter 12, Endwood. After several hours of walking, Leaf's bubbling happiness had settled to a feeling of quiet contentment. The twisted, weed-choked trees of the forest fringe had been left behind. Wood was now a beautiful place, filled with bird song. Golden pools of sunlight dappled the soft earth, and ferns clustered at the roots of the mighty trees. All the companions knew, however, that the evil reputation of the forests of silence was well deserved. They knew, too, that within the greatest beauty terror could be lying in wait. So they walked in silence, one behind the other, alert for signs of danger. Just before sunset, Jasmine chose a tree for them, and they climbed up to high branches where they could eat and sleep in some safety. It was not a restful night. They dozed fitfully in turns as unseen creatures slid and prowled below them. In the darkest hours, where the moon had set, a faint, chilling chorus of howls and screams began. It lasted only a few minutes, but after it had died away, the companions slept no more. They welcomed the dawn gratefully, but forced themselves to wait until sunlight fell on the forest's floor before venturing down from their hiding place and moving on. As before, Jasmine led them, threading her way almost silently through the trees, brushing the smooth bark of each one lightly with the tips of her fingers as she passed. Cree fluttered ahead of her, a black shadow against a background of green and gold. Sorry about that. After a time, Jasmine began to move faster, Leaf and Barda, stiff and aching after their night tree, themselves struggling to keep her in view. "Jasmine, slow down," Leaf called in a low voice, but Jasmine turned with a frown, her finger to her lips, beckoned impatiently, and set off again, even faster than before. At last, Leaf became aware whose sound had begun to mingle with the bird's song. It was the sound of trickling water, a stream somewhere near. It made him realize how thirsty he was, but he did not dare to stop and drink from his water flask. Jasmine was almost running now, and all he could do was follow. The gurgling, rippling sound grew louder, and at last Jasmine stopped. Least she had reached the stream he had been listening to for so long. Broad and shallow, the stream ran across their path, sunbeams dancing on the clear water that gurgled over its pebbled bed. On the other side, there were no trees, only a mass of and ferns, rising like a feathery barrier that completely hid whatever was beyond. Creeped down to the water's edge. Jasmine waited while he drank. Only when he had finished and had flown up an inch high above her head did she kneel to drink herself. Philly scuttled down from her shoulder and began to drink also, his tiny pink tongue lapping fussily, but all the time his eyes darted from side to side, so he could not be taken by surprise. "Did you have to go so fast?" Bottom muttered, as he and Leaf at last reached the stream and crouched beside Jasmine to quench their raging thirsts. "The trees say we are being followed," Jasmine said shortly. "Someone has been tracking us since dawn from the direction of Endwood Gap." As she spoke, she glanced up to where Cree kept watch. He was so still that he looked part of the tree itself. Only his yellow eye was moving fierce and bright. Leaf had lifted a handful of water to his lips. Now he felt as if the icy liquid was trickling down his spine. He glanced down at the belt. The topaz still gleamed brightly, but the ruby had paled once more. "Who?" he murmured. Jasmine lifted Philly to her shoulder, wiped her mouth with the back of her hand, and stood up. "The same enemy, I imagine, who tried to make us fall to our deaths at Endwood Gap," she said. all the trees can tell me is that he is tall and fierce and moving much faster than we are. Where we have traveled above ground, he does also, swinging from tree to tree. Where we have gone on foot, he runs bent to double, sniffing the ground like a beast. The words painted a disturbing picture. Leaf's scalp crawled. How close is he now? Bada asked, once the big man had scoffed at the idea that Jasmine could understand the language of trees, but those days were long past. Already he has almost reached the place where we spent the night, Jasmine said. We must throw him off the scent. That is why I bade haste to reach the stream. If we wade through the water, he will not be able to smell our tracks. He will not know if we... It's always thinking pop-ups. If we have gone left or right, so we may escape him. Why should we try to escape? Bada growled. Why not stand and face him? I would like to give him proper thanks for all he has done for us. Scrawling, he touched his sword. We took this way to save time, Barda, Jasmine pointed out coldly. This edge cannot be far away now. Do we want to waste energy fighting a beast man who has a grudge against us? Or do we want to reach Dragon's Nest with all speed? We want to reach Dragon's Nest, Leaf said reluctantly. Let us use the stream, as Jasmine says. He felt as Barda did, but he knew that Jasmine's plan was more practical. To Jasmine, all that mattered was the task at hand. Pride, revenge, curiosity, to her such things were not important, and could wait. And they can wait. Of course they can. Leaf told himself, but secretly he sympathized, as Barda grumbled in annoyance. Jasmine stepped into the stream and waded a little way along it to the right. She touched the violets, often with her hands, and let her hair tangle with the ferns that overhung the water's edge. Then she turned, tucked her hair beneath her collar, flattened herself in the water, and crawled back, being careful to touch nothing. That should lead him astray very well, she grinned. Not follow me, keep in the center of the stream and very low, so that the ferns do not brush your backs. She set off towards the left, following her own advice. Leaf and Barda crawled after her. They moved through the cold water for what seemed like a very long time. Leaf's hands were numb, and his teeth were chattering when Jasmine at last called a halt. I think we have gone for far enough now, she whispered, getting to her feet. And see here. She pointed at the bank beside her. There, to his amazement, Leaf saw a pathway of large rounded stones winding away through the ferns. It must be the bed of another stream that once joined this one, Jasmine said. If our luck holds, it will at least lead us through the ferns, and perhaps all the way to the forest edge. Anything to get off our knees and out of this cursed water, muttered Bada, crawling to his feet. Shivering, the companions waded out of the stream and began following the mossy path. Soon it was as if they were moving through a soft green tunnel. Great arching frowns met over their heads, so they could not see the sky. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and rotting leaves. There was not a breath of wind, and no birds sang. They walked with their hands on the hilts of their weapons, not speaking, barely breathing. Leaf glanced down. He could not rid himself of the idea that there was something very odd about the path. He tried to convince himself that Jasmine was right, and it was an old stream bed. Yet the stones were so large and so evenly placed, almost as if someone had gathered them and put them on the path one by one. But who would have done such a thing, and for what purpose, in this wilderness? Oh! Leaf's head jerked up as Jasmine gasped, and his sword was in his hand before he realized that she was not in danger. She was standing stock still, holding a feathery veil of ferns apart, staring at something ahead. "Look!" she breathed. Leaf and Bada crowded in behind her and peered over her shoulder at something that was like a picture in a book of fairy tales. Beyond the ferns, countless small trees loaded with golden fruit grew in a broad pool of still, shallow water. They were perfectly reflected in the water's mirror-like surface, their graceful trunks rising, their broad green leaves spreading, their fruits glowing like tiny floating suns. Jasmine moved forward. Wait, Jasmine, sorry. Bada called urgently. Wait, we do not know. But Jasmine had already stepped into the water. It barely reached her ankles. She turned her head, smiling. It is warm, she said. Excuse me. I had some soda to drink, so I might be a bit burpy. Oh, and see the fruit? Can you smell it? Leaf could indeed smell the fruit. It was a glorious, rich, sweet scent. His mouth began to water. Cree flew from Jasmine's shoulder and perched on a hot bough of the nearest tree. Greedily he dug his beak into one of the golden fruits. Juice dripped into the water, making circles of ripples where it fell. The delicious fragrance grew stronger. Philly began to whimper and chatter. Jasmine splashed to the tree and let the little creature leap up beside Cree. Was that meant to rhyme? The golden fruits were as big as Philly himself, but that did not dismay him. He clutched one with his paws and began nibbling it eagerly. This was too much for Leaf. He stepped into the water and moved to Jasmine's side. Do the trees say the fruit is safe to eat? He murmured. Jasmine shrugged. These trees speak only to one another and keep their secrets, she said. But Philly and Cree seemed sure that all is well. Leaf stretched out his hand and picked one of the fruits. It was shaped a little like a pear, but much larger and heavier. In places its smooth golden skin was slightly flushed with pink. He lifted it to his nose and breathed in the delicious fragrance. Then, almost without intending to do it, he took a bite. Chapter 13, Sweet and Sour. I love sweet and sour chicken. A glorious taste filled Leif's mouth. Sweet golden juice ran down his chin. Then suddenly he realized that something very bitter was mingling with the sweetness. Quickly he spat what remained of the chewed skin into his hand, grimacing. "The skin is bitter," he said, wrinkling his nose. "Oh, it is disgusting. How can Philly and Cree bear it?" Jasmine grinned and pulled out her knife. "They are not as fussy about food as we are," she said. "I am glad you made the experiment before me." She took a fruit from the tree and began to peel it. In that moment she was sinking her teeth into sweet, gleaming golden flesh. Murmuring with pleasure, Leif followed her example, and after a few moments of watching suspiciously, Barda did the same. Soon each one of them was silently absorbed in the blissful enjoyment of the rare feast. The water around their feet was littered with fruit skins and the long, flat seeds they found in the fruit's centers. Time passed.